Welcome back to this latest episode of Japan's Top Business Interviews. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Story, President of Dale Carnegie Toga Training. A special guest today is a fellow Aussie, Bostjan, Ljubic, who is the MD of ARYZTA Food Solutions here in Japan.
Hi Greg, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And how is it that you are in Japan running all these businesses here over the years? Give us a little bit of the backstory.
I've been in Japan now, almost 20 years. I think I say that to everyone. I've said 20 years for the last 3 years, so could be a little bit longer. I started here in an office furniture company. I actually I came here, let me start at the very beginning. I came here on a working holiday visa. I stayed here for, I think, a year and a half, loved it, went back to Australia, where I was working in a restaurant and met the president of a furniture company. He loved my Japanese. He said, come work for me. I thought, yes, whatever. I was in a restaurant at the time, and he said, come work for me here in Japan. I said, no worries. A week later, he called the place I was working and said, I'm going to get you a visa, come down. I went, okay, fantastic. It was a little bit of luck.
Had you studied Japanese at the time?
Not at all, no. I thought I just wanted to get out of...
A year and a half of learning Japanese, going to classes, or just picking
Not at all.
bars and roppongi?
I think it was a little bit of that, and then sort of just when I'd go home, I couldn't put a sentence together. So what I was doing was writing 10 words every day into a dictionary, into a journal 10 times, and I would just practice that, put a pretty dodgy sentence together, and people would help me and just say, no, this is how you say it. And I think I learned through that. So every day I'd go home and rewrite another 10, and just continue to use that. That repetition definitely helped me. And that's sort of how I started my Japanese language.
So the guy starts you in the restaurant.
He does, and then he gets me a resume, puts me here, and I was working for him for 2 years in an office furniture interior design. And I did that, and then I got headhunted by a company called Steelcase, which is an American office furniture organization, where I worked for about 14 years of my career. I started with them here in Japan. After a few years, I went to Hong Kong, set up their office there. Came back to Japan, where I led the office here for about 4 or 5 years. Then they sent me to the UK. Where I did another 3 years.
Join Steelcase and see the world.
Yeah, it was really fantastic. I mean, they gave me these opportunities, and I took them, and I think that was really grateful for there. I learned a lot about leadership, learned a lot about how to run an organization, so that was quite exciting. So did that, and then came back to Japan, and I worked for a company called Compass Group, which is a UK large catering organization, where I was the leader for sales for Japan. They have 20,000 employees here in Japan, and I was leading the sales division, which is quite a big division.
Tons of people in the sales division.
60 odd people. So it was a great experience, and I was leading that for 6 years. And it was, though I was on the board of the company, I was one of the silos that were driving that business. What I wanted to do was get back into what I was doing similar in Steelcase, which is really the whole picture. So I found ARYZTA, and I joined them in April. April this year,
so
yeah.
It's not been that long.
So I haven't been here that long, 8 months.
But you have a lot of experience in Japan. And I guess, when you were here with Steelcase the first time, and then you went to Hong Kong, were you heading up the sales department in...
Yeah, so I started we had a small sales office there. I think it was 1 or 2 people. When we expanded it to 12 people by the time I left.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you come back as a CEO.
Leading the sales office. Yeah.
So in terms of, you've been in Japan, you've been working in the furniture business, but probably not as the boss or head of anything, I guess. Particularly, were you heading something in the furniture business?
So for Japan, I was pretty much the key person. So I'd have finance business partner, I would have HR business partner, but I would be leading.
Okay, so let's talk about that first experience, because when you're here, first year and a half, love Japan, okay, scouted in the restaurant, come back. Now suddenly you're leading a team.
Yeah.
You're leading a functionality or something of that nature in the company, for the furniture company. What were things you found a bit challenging to lead in Japan? Because what you'd done before didn't necessarily prepare you for that role.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me it was, challenging was confidence in myself. I knew I could do it, but when you speak in an open or in a wider group, that was quite nervous. I was quite nervous to do that, and I think that was my first real experience into how do I lead people. I didn't want to fail. I wanted to be successful, and that was really my mindset at the time. And I think what helped me a lot was being able to fail, and that was really early coaching that I got from it's okay to fail, learn quick,
And the head of the company is Japanese?
He was a Japanese gentleman, a very super.
Sounds like a super flexible Japanese businessman.
He was. I think he was very unique. He was very a unique character. Unfortunately, he passed away 4 years ago. But he wasn't your typical norm, and I think I was extremely lucky to be into that environment at such a early time of my career.
Failure is not an option, right? No defects, no failures, no errors, no mistakes.
Yeah.
Here you are being allowed to make mistakes in his company. That's quite a unique experience.
Yeah.
So you had that base experience, and so then you come back and you're running the sales team, which has started small, and Steelcase, you built it up. So what were some challenges? You see, moving, well, I guess furniture, Steelcase, it's still broad spectrum furniture, I suppose, office furniture. But what was the difference of going to quite a, I guess, bigger operation or international operation from what you were doing before in terms of the leadership role you had?
At Steelcase?
Yes.
So I think some of the challenges, so Steelcase is fantastic with global organizations. Our challenge was how do we really tap into the local market? I mean, that's really where it's going to be. You have your Googles, you have your so on, but do you have the Satos and the local companies, and how do you really crack that market, and how do you really sell a premium product into something more of a cost conservative or sort of conservative environment? I think that was really one of our biggest challenges as an organization. And I think it was really just for us, it was to get in earlier and meet people higher up. I think as foreign nationals, we have a lot of opportunity to meet and mingle and network. And I think it was really bringing my team in to say, you can get into different networks, different teams. You just need to expose yourself to get in there. So it was really helping the team understand that you've got to get out and network. You've got to get out and be with more organizations, and then you'll start to really build your own network where you'll meet the CEOs, the presidents, and so on. And they're the people that if you can convince with the right story, you'll get in and you'll be able to sell into those and crack that market as well.
What we hear a lot, though, from our clients when they're looking for sales training is they often say, well, we've got a really excellent group of farmers down here, really fantastic account managers. But when we ask them to go out and get new clients, they're like not interested at all. They're fearful, they're hesitant, they're resisting. It's quite a problem. So how did you convince them to become hunters, not just farmers? How was that process of leading them through that transition? Because in Japan, you talk about go to networking events. I go to networking events with all Japanese people involved. No one talks to anybody. So you and I know each other. Yeah. So we're chatting. Yeah. And if you know someone, you'll introduce them to me, vice versa. But someone walking up to someone bold-faced, never met them before, and engaging in a conversation, you don't see that very often in Japan. Whereas I think in an Australian context or Western context, that'd be no issue. Of course you're going to go and talk to people you don't know. That's why you're there. So, how did you convince them to actually, bite the bullet and get out there and actually really, work the room, as we say? Yeah,
absolutely. I think to me, what that is you need to give them the environment to do so. So how do you help people to get there? I think listening is an important skill. So it's really sitting down with the sales team and understanding how are they doing it right now? What could we do different? Don't be scared to do something and it's out of the norm. So it's really introducing change. Same here as I'm doing right now at ARYZTA. I had to do at Compass and I had to do at Steelcase as well. It's really just promoting change. It's okay to fail, what I learned in my earlier times. And it's really going out there and understanding how they're doing it now. Why don't we try this way? If it works, great. Let's continue down that path. And it's exposing them to that.
That failure thing, it's interesting. Like you get this in companies where, my door's always open, no one goes in the door. It's okay to fail, we're learning. And then someone fails. Next thing, whack, straight on the side of the head. Oh, you screwed up. So the belief in what you're saying on the part of the team you know, maybe initially you might say that, but they're like, really? Because their whole education is around no failure, right? So how did you get to walk the talk with them so they actually believed you that when you said it's okay to fail, it was true? Not just you, but also your middle management.
Yeah, 100%.
You might say it. The middle management gives a good whack on the side of the head when they screw it up.
I always lead by example. I don't lead by sitting in my chair and then saying that's how it's done. I failed, and I talk about my fails. I'm open about that. I think transparency is key to really building a culture that people can then drive and feel safe. But that won't happen if I'm not transparent, or if I'm not leading by example, if I'm not saying, I'll do this and see how it worked and share that example. So that there, I believe, is a big part of the okay to fail piece.
So, you know, you've been here 20 odd years, 23 years or so, and you've worked in a number of different industries and companies, and you think about what you've learned over that period of time around how to get people engaged. What have you found works well to get teams engaged?
It's open communication. I looked at, we had results, and it's been in numerous companies, we'd have our engagement results, and for me, probably won't disclose it on this here.
Don't worry. It's, you know, you look at Gallup, they do these engagement surveys every year, and Japan is usually somewhere under 7% engaged. It's a very low number.
So if you look at it as a rowing boat, you're seeing people rowing against the team that's trying to push forward. So for me, look, it's really just one key part there was communication, and no matter which company I've been at, it's always been communication.
What does that mean in practice? You know, because you know, are we giving the sort of locker room halftime motivational talk here at the town hall? Are we talking about emails? Are we talking about one-on-ones? Are we talking about small groups? I mean, what have you found? Communication is a broad spectrum term.
Sure.
What particular communication tools have you found?
All of above. So today is our town hall meeting. I'll do other things where it's a skip, we call it a skip meeting, where they can talk. Anyone in the organization will pick 5, then comes and has a lunch with me, and then we'll share a little bit about what's working in the organization.
The skip meeting is anyone can pick?
Anyone throughout our organization here at ARYZTA can then choose to have lunch with me. So there'll be 3 or 4 people that'll say, I would like to go and have lunch, and they put their hand up.
5 people.
Up to 5, exactly. I found if it's too big a group, you lose that sort of intimacy.
How many people in ARYZTA here?
We have 60.
60, right? So, you know, you're going to cycle through 12, that's one a month, that's a year, right?
That's pretty much a year, so it's exactly what we've done. Yeah, so I've only done 8 because it's been 8 months. But that's one of the things. Town hall I found is interesting. I then did a survey 3 months into, so we did 3 town halls where I shared financial. So I took things from the engagement where I noticed people saying there's a disengagement, or they didn't understand, or they wanted to know more. So we focused on those. 3 months in, we then said, where do we stand? Are we doing too many town halls? Is it not enough? What's about the content? And surprising, and should we have it in a monthly, or should we now do it like every quarter? Really pleased to hear that everyone said we love it, we want to do it in a month, and that was 70%, 75 I think was there saying we love it, we want you to continue and do it. So already an engagement increase just from that.
Just from that. Are you quite transparent with the numbers? You share the profit loss, you know, the whole thing, as opposed to they see only a selection of numbers?
No, they see it. I'm very open, very open, as transparent. And what I'm not trying to do is make it too confusing. No one's a financial expert. No. And if I get my finance team to talk, it becomes somewhat sleepy. So we've all said, guys, we need to make sure that it's easy for everyone to understand, be it...
Here's the high points.
Exactly. Really share the details that they're interested in. How are we doing in sales? Where is our profit? What are we, what is it? So we will talk about those and focus on those. And during town hall, I will say, do we understand? Is everyone understanding that? If not, mail me and we'll learn from that and we'll change.
So in your lunches, your up to 5 people lunches, how's that run? Are you, because one of the dangers when you're the leader is you wind up talking the whole time, and telling them stuff and engaging them in what's going on with your thinking, your strategy and whatever, as opposed to listening to what they're thinking or getting, answers to their questions and something. So how do you get the balance right on that?
So I always say uncomfortable is good. And what I mean by that, if you're comfortable in sales, then there's a problem. So uncomfortable is good. So if we're sitting there, I don't talk.
I actually want that sales job. But
So I'll sit there and I won't talk. I will listen. We have preset, this is what I would like you to think about. What's working well? What's working well? What could we improve? And how, what do you like? And give us some solution. I also say, don't just come with the problem, come with a solution. And I think if you think like that, people do have solutions. A lot of people are very, very smart. We've got a lot of smart people, so they just need to talk about it. Maybe why don't we try that? And it's leading with those, which comes back to how do we show that we can be really a fail-okay company. And I think that comes from there. When someone does give me an idea, our skip meetings will always be before the leadership team meeting. So that was so we have a colleague who worked in Amazon, and I think they called it skip meeting there. Yeah, it's skip the. You can't. It pops up. Skip the hierarchy. I think skip management or whatever it may be, and we just stuck with the name. I think that's. I didn't like it because it sounds a little odd, but when you Google it, it pops up, and so I thought, okay, let's just keep it. But yeah, so again, I'll take the notes from that, and I actually just had one today, by the way. I have that, and then we'll have our leadership team meeting where I'll share it and say, this is what I heard, and we need to change this. I think this one's key. So let's focus on that. What do you think? Where do you stand? And then we'll all work through that through the leadership team.
Okay. And in terms of other things you've found works well in getting engagement, because the survey results are always pathetic for Japan. Apart from what we discussed, anything else that's working for you? In terms of getting engagement from the team? You mentioned, you talked about communication, you've gone through the structures you've got here or the things you've used in the past, but I just think there's anything else you've noted. Like, it used to be, you go out drinking, it used to be, socialising, but the last 5-10 years, that seems to sort of faded right out. People are not interested in spending their valuable time with anybody in the hierarchy after work.
Yeah.
So, no, thank you, I don't want to go on the company trip, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And, I'm just wondering how you're approaching that.
I think it's from what I mentioned earlier. It's really, I am trying to change the culture of the organisation to be as transparent as possible. That was one key thing. Another big, so we had all the bubble words, and what was important was larger. So salary was another one. So I have put in job grades. So that was one of the tasks that I've given our HR to really put job grades in. So simple things like that. Communication was key. And I really can only track it through through surveys that we've done recently, sort of on the town hall, how's that doing? And another one was, we're having our Bonenkai tonight, and the whole office is coming, not one or two. So it's the whole office. So that was something that hasn't happened in the past. So those things are things that, to me, show, okay, it's working. We're not there 100%. We still need a lot more. There's still a lot to go. But for me, I think that's crystal clear that we're already starting to see more engagement. I think it's being transparent. It's not just me. And I think I'm very open in that. And I've tried to get my leadership to be more exposed when they talk. It's not just Bostjan out there talking to the group and it's a Bostjan show. It's not. And I say that as much as possible. It's everyone's ARYZTA. And to grow ARYZTA, we need everyone. And I stole it from the rugby, the one team. Okay, right. We all heard it. It's overused, but I really believe it. If you have one team all focused in the same goal, you'll get there. I can't say 100% are on board, and if they're not, then we have a different conversation. We'll try our best to get them on board, but the boat's going and the boat's moving forward.
I guess with some of those surveys, I don't know if you've looked at it yourself, but in previous companies when we'd get the surveys, and then you go back and you look at the translation of the English into Japanese, and I found in many cases the translation was not clear enough. And it might be something that the companies just go back and check the Japanese, because sometimes it just misses the nuance or misses the point. People are confused about what's being asked. And one thing too I found was some of the questions are not really, I don't think, even relevant for Japan. Like there was two particular questions. I can't remember what the two were. One was, would you recommend to your family and friends to work at ARYZTA?
Mm.
And Japanese never say yes to that because they worry, well, if I introduce my family member or friend and they hate ARYZTA, I'll have trouble at home.
Yeah.
Or if ARYZTA hates them, I'll have trouble
Yeah.
at work. So the safest course of action here is don't do that.
Yeah.
But it looks negative
Yeah.
in actual scoring. Oh, you're not proud of your company, you're not prepared to bring people in who you know. But culturally,
Yeah.
I always thought that was a bit of a dodgy question for Japan. But anyway, it's interesting to look at those things.
Yeah, we looked at the Japanese, we saw that, and you have to take some things because it comes with a culture of being 100% right. If you look at Japan, they're quite conservative and they always want to get things 100% right. And that's where I've tried to taper that down to say 80%'s okay. Let's try it. We'll figure out that 20. We'll get there. We just let's do it. Let's move forward and then learn from that. I think it's all about learning. I learn every day. Everyone's learning every day, and it's really just promoting that. Funny you say the bringing people. So what we're trying to do now is have your family come to the office.
Okay.
So I'm doing. My kids are coming. I've had other people come in. So it's just seeing it. We have also a baking studio in Yoyogi, so not far from where we are right now. And it's a decent size baking studio where you can bake, and so we're bringing in people to test it and bake themselves. So it could be your family members and so on. So it's really getting more of not just dad, mum working here, but also your family to come in and see where does mum and dad work, where are they working, and learn a little bit more about who ARYZTA is. We have a fantastic product. That's something I can say with extreme confidence. So no one talks badly about their product, which is really something. It's great. I had it in Steelcase. It's something that people love the product, and you can really see that within the team. Yeah.
In terms of you mentioned with the skip lunches where you're getting ideas from the team, and I'm thinking about how to get ideas from the team. So it's not just the boss, who's plugged into the world system and English and lots of sources of information, and therefore being stimulated by ideas all the time, being sent off to courses and this sort of stuff. Whereas the local team members are probably not plugged into that so much. And you mentioned the lunches to get ideas out. Any other things you found work well to get ideas to bottom up?
I think it's in the way you communicate as well. I'm quite casual when I talk with the team. There's no, I'll hear shacho every now and then. It's like, just, my name's Bostjan, call me Bostjan. Let's just talk, and I'll have one-on-ones. It'll be the coffee area. It'll be over a croissant or whatever it may be. And it's just really not casual, but somewhat casual conversations I'll have with team members that they know that they can be open. So you do see that environment's being built right now where people can have casual conversations. If I do hear something and they come to me, I say, well, have you spoken to that person? And then I'll grab that person as well as the other and say, now you can talk, and then walk away. So it's just really trying to build up that communication that way.
And also, you've got 60 people, so you've got divisions, you've got division heads. So in some cases in Japan, in some companies, if the shacho, president, is going down the hierarchy to people in their divisions, talking directly to them, in many cases in companies they get very nervous. What are my people saying about me to the president? Or what are they talking about? And so are you squaring that off with those people first? Obviously we have our team leadership meetings, but from time to time I'm going to talk to your people. I'm not going down there to find out things about you. I'm just trying to have a communication access to people at the bottom so they can talk to me as well. To sort of calm them down that this is not something that's going to be exposing or losing face or creating a problem for them, because in a Japanese context they would worry. What are they saying about me to the boss?
I'm very lucky here. I know that the team is very open to learn, and I think that's a little bit of what the environment I'm trying to build. It's not about that person. It's not about Bostjan. It's not about my finance director. It's not about them. It's about ARYZTA as a whole, and how do we get that better? So no one's talking badly about someone or something. It's what do we need to do to improve as an organization. So it's a very open environment that I'm really trying to push. So it's not about that. And whatever, after a skip meeting, we'll have our LT meeting, and it's there to share. And it's never about that individual or the leader. it may be about communication, maybe about something else, but how do we improve on that? And everyone there, I know, I can see them, they're jotting down notes. It's like, okay. And what I know is that my leaders then do talk about, okay, we heard and this is what we want to do to improve it. So actually acting on what's been said, I think is also sending a really great message to everyone.
That's also a point too, isn't it? In terms of, I often think that in Japan, middle management, the metaphor I have in my mind is a massive sponge on the top of a slab of concrete that's like the floor of a building. And the middle management suck all of information and data and insight from above, from the machine and the bosses, but they don't pass anything down. It doesn't penetrate to the people at the bottom. And often you'll find in companies, big companies here, that the senior management think we have communicated the strategy, vision, mission, values, done. We've done that, good. But it sort of hits this concrete slab. And the people at the bottom don't know what it is. And in fact, I've related this story many times on this podcast that we teach leadership training and room full of middle managers. And on the walls, you often have the vision, mission, value statements. Take it off the wall, turn it around. What's the vision of this company? 30 people, right? Nobody. Mission? Nobody. Usually have 5 leaders. Collectively, they get maybe 2, maybe 3 on a good day. And you ask yourself, wow, okay, the senior leadership in this organisation believes that everybody's on board with this. But the middle management is not playing their role. And I think if you don't know what it is, I don't know how you can live it. And I certainly don't know how you can communicate that to other people. So what's been your experience of making sure that the things in the companies you've worked in, that you're proclaiming that we're going to do, or the strategy, or the ethos, or the culture, or whatever it is, that is actually getting to the people, the newest, youngest person at the bottom is actually aware of what we stand for here?
One word that comes immediately would be accountability. No matter which organisation it is, I make sure that it's in their performance reviews, whatever it may be. My leadership need to be accountable for the growth of their own teams, to make sure that they understand, whichever organisation I've been at, what is the goal of the organisation, how can they contribute, and how can we develop them to get up to the next step as well. So these are things that I'll put into all of the performance reviews I'll do with all of the team. So there's motivation attached to that. So yeah, I think it's really accountability, driving that accountability into the leadership team. If the message is not being delivered, then the management's not doing their job.
No, and often they're not in Japan, I've got to be honest. So if we think about trust, building trust. Now you've been in different organisations, and you come in to a new organisation in the furniture business from Australia. You then move to Steelcase, you're coming from outside, and then you move to Hong Kong, different team there, then you come back as a CEO, and you go to Compass as a new company, and now here at ARYZTA as a new company. So, you're moving around, so you're constantly having to establish a relationship with people. Some who may know you, some who don't know you. What do you feel works well building trust in Japan?
Trust, I think it comes through leading by example, seeing, especially when you become a new leader. A lot of people, like, I can remember the first 2 months here, everyone's like, oh, what's he thinking? How's he thinking? But they noticed after a while, what I'm saying is actually what I mean, and there's no hidden agenda, there's nothing, and I'm being transparent, and I'm leading, I'm out with the team, I'm out as much as I can, not out drinking, out with them, with visiting customers, doing what we need to do. And I think that's just one key way to build trust. If you're really there and you're engaged and you're truthful and transparent, you'll get a very different team. They're not, a lot of them were thinking, oh, what's he going to do? What's he really mean by that? Well, that's what I meant, and that's what I did. So no matter which organization it was, that's how I would lead. It's just always being transparent. What you see is what you get. Good, bad, I don't know, but it's worked for me, and I've enjoyed that.
In terms of, when you come into a new organisation or you come back to the organisation as a leader, do you have a type of format plan that how you're going to approach it? 90-day plan, 60-day plan, 120-day plan, or whatever? That's one thing. That's part A of the question. Part B is trying to template what worked in one place in a different place can sometimes be problematic. how do we get around that issue?
Mhm.
It worked over here,
So it's going to work here.
so everything looks like a nail to a
Yeah,
hammer, right?
yeah.
Type of thing. So,
Yeah.
how did you work across those two aspects?
Okay, so to answer the first question, yes, of course, I have a plan. It's usually a 90-day plan for what I would need to do, understand, get that. So yes, absolutely need a plan for every organization, especially learning. This is new. I moved from furniture to catering to now F&B, so everything was new and experience. So every day is a learning opportunity. So definitely have a plan in place. And then I wouldn't say everything you do in another organization works well in the other. I think there's definitely aspects of companies that you can pick and steal and learn and whatever it may be and say that really worked well, but it might not work here. So it's just trying those things. So I wouldn't say just because I had this in this company, it's going to work fantastic in this. Certain aspects of it may.
We have found a success formula
Mm-hmm.
in one environment with one group of people.
Yeah.
And we think, well, bingo,
Yeah.
that worked. I'll just plot that over here and give it a go over here.
Yeah.
And, and suddenly it's not working.
Yeah.
So these wheels are falling off, and it's a disaster. So it's a danger, isn't it? As a leader, we get.
Yeah.
How do we actually get around that?
It's also the functions as well. So if it's sales to sales, yes, there's definite aspects that maybe you can take from there, whether it's KPI tracking or whatever it may be. If it's fine, there's certain aspects you could probably take from each organization, but I've had key learnings from all of the organizations, and it's sort of molding it into what would work here and running those through my plans and running through, okay, this may work here, let's try it. And then try it was the word. Give it a go, see how it works. I'm not there changing the strategy all the time, but I believe this will work after doing my sort of personal analysis. That'll work, let's give that a go. And that's what I want to launch for next year.
If you want to be successful as a leader, do the Leadership Training for Managers course. All companies need people who can both manage and lead. Leading people screams out for real skills in communication, dealing with all different types of people, being excellent at innovation, planning, delegation, handling mistakes, doing performance reviews really well, and inspiring and motivating the team. Do the Leadership Training for Managers course now in either Japanese or English. Are you doing business with Japan? Do you really know how things work? Japan Business Mastery provides the answers. Do you have the right networks and know how to create them? Do you know how to get on the same wavelength with Japanese buyers? Do you know what being trustworthy looks like from the Japanese perspective? Japan Business Mastery is based on more than 30 years' experience in Japan and will become your go-to guide. Want to succeed in Japan? Buy Japan Business Mastery now. What about culture? Because organisations have an existing culture, a headquarter culture, and then you have Japanese culture, local culture here, and then you have the Boston culture, that you want to create a culture in the organisation yourself that you like, or you think is the most effective. So what have you found works well to build culture in organisations?
Again, I feel really lucky. ARYZTA and one of the reasons I obviously took the role is because the cultures match. When I was in the interview process, I met who is the CEO of Global Chief. All of the group people were in my interview process. Local APAC was in my interview process. And I asked questions. I wanted to understand more about the organization, and probably they thought I did a lot of research. So it really matched with my ethos, who I am, what I want to do, and how I want to work. So after I had that, I knew that this is the right organization for me. After understanding, hearing from everyone, and they're not different, that's the right thing. I can't say that for every company. And some companies won't match with your culture. And you learn that through that working experience. I'll drive the same way, and I've mentioned to you earlier, what I want is that culture of transparency, is communication, open environment. This is really what I am in driving, and that's me, and that's really ARYZTA as well. It's different for other organizations, as I said, but I'll drive my own, continue to do that based on the company's vision. Wherever I am, I won't make my own up, but I'll drive what I'm being told. But I'll build the culture I want. Maybe it's a little different from whether it's the UK or the America or here now, ARYZTA Swiss.
One of the characteristics of leaders in Japan for great-scale organisations, multinational organisations, is that they turn Japan into a little castle with a big moat around it called the ocean, you know, and metaphorically and physically. And so there is always that aspect of, because Japan is quite specific in many ways, and you adapt to what works here with the clients, etc., that it tends to isolate itself out and doesn't quite seem to fit in with what everyone else is doing. And this sometimes causes tension in the organisation.
Yeah.
Japan's sort of gone rogue, or
Yeah, I've heard it.
Gone local, or he's
Doing his own thing. Yeah.
doing his own thing, and he's not really following the plan. What do you think about that sort of danger?
I think I learned from a very early stage at Steelcase that it's really a global. I think at the very beginning of my Steelcase career, it was America does it this way, everyone follows. But the leader at the time, Jim Hackett, his name was, he changed that. He really made a huge difference when he became CEO. He said, we all need to work together, and he really built the matrix organization throughout Steelcase, and that was a great way to learn. It's not, Japan's not on its own. It has many people that support the growth of the business, and it's using those people to help you grow. So Japan was isolated a little bit. It was the person who was leading it, and it was his island, and that slowly started to change, and I really enjoy that, because as I tell my team here, it's not just the Bostjan ARYZTA, it's everyone's ARYZTA. I feel that it's ARYZTA as globally will support us grow, whether that'll be our manufacturing in Malaysia. How do we connect with them? How do we get them to support you? And it's really making those connections. So I didn't really answer your question, but for me, yeah, there's that, but that's more of the olden style thinking. I see that changing a lot as more organizations want to take advantage of the great place Japan is, the potential that's here. There's plenty of potential. And I think a lot of that hasn't been seized till, I don't know, it's probably changing in the last 10 years. I don't really see the one Shacho leading it and being very different from group. I've seen that change a lot. A lot of my friends, people I know, it used to be like that, and it's changing in many, many organizations to be more, how do we integrate Japan into the organization, be it APAC or be it group level or be it wherever it may be.
It's interesting too. I mean, we see it in the training industry where, and you talk about previous President Hackett at Steelcase, and when he came in, he changed it. It seems to be like a 5-year cycle, you know. President changes. If it was localized previously, we're centralized, and we control everything from headquarters. Then that president lasts about 5 years and goes out. The new president comes in, right, we're going to localise everything.
Yeah.
It's these massive pendulum swings between localisation and centralisation. So as a training company, if we bump into someone who's got everything centralised, and you've got to try and convince headquarters about the training, global, if you're not the global provider, you're out.
Yeah.
Then you hope that in 5 years' time it's going to localise again, and the local crew will have a chance to decide who's going to do the training. So I feel sensitive for that process. In terms of if you were thinking about giving some advice to someone who's going to be sent to Japan, so they ring you up, hey, Bostjan, I've got this big job in Japan, I'm the organisation there, but I don't know Japan, I don't know anything about Japanese language, anything like that. What would be some advice you give them?
I'd say Japan, unfortunately, you do need to know the language. One thing I can see, people who have succeeded know how to really use the language. So it would be like, at least start with some certain language skill. If you have that, and then continue learning, there's plenty of opportunity. One thing now, though, in saying that, Japan, 35% are over 65, and the population's not growing. So the need for foreign national support in Japan is growing, and it's going to continue to grow. I mean, if you look at 8 years ago, when you went to a restaurant, how many people were Japanese behind the kitchen or the servers? Now, it's completely flipped. Wherever you go, and you're starting to see that. So there's definitely a lot more opportunity that's going to be available for many people globally. For me, I would say, I don't really know. Just understand that don't come in thinking what's worked well before. And I think you mentioned a little bit, what's worked before, what you've done in wherever you're from is going to work perfectly here. I think it's really listen to what people are saying, make your own judgment, and then do what you need to do. If you come in with a preset, I need to do this, it can be quite tough.
Also, often you get marching orders from headquarters.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Okay, you're going to Japan, we're not being happy about this part of the business being run there the way it's run, we want to change, you're the agents of change, get in there and change it. So how do you balance that, being driven by headquarters to change, but as you're saying, listen, consider, that takes time. Why hasn't it changed? You've been there a month, Bostjan, what are you doing over there? You don't have a problem, that type of issue. How do you balance that out?
I always ask for wherever it is joining here, how long is it before you expect something to change? So I always get that gauge, so I know where I'm standing and where I'll be in my planning.
How long do they normally give you? What's the range?
It depends. Most have said a year. They want to see some difference in a year, which makes sense.
That's reasonable.
Yeah. One thing I do see in any of the organizations, efficiency can be improved. I do see a lot of duplications and in whichever organization, in the 20 odd years I've been here, that Japan's probably not the most efficient organization when it comes to, if you've taken your license here, you have to walk to the 6th floor, to the 3rd floor, to the 1st floor to get a stamp here, go there. It's not the most efficient process. So I think looking at some of those processes, you can really improve on those, and they can be quick wins.
It's ironic in a way, because the Toyota Kanban system is the icon of efficiency and logistical flow and great, and yet you say that.
But Kanban's been around for 20 years, and what's next? And I think it's looking at what efficiencies can we drive even further.
My point is, I don't think some people even got to the Kanban stage.
Yeah.
As you say, running around.
It's interesting. We still get orders by fax.
No kidding, really.
It's just it's amazing, and these are leading companies as well. So for me, we can improve on efficiency. So I think there's quick wins that you can provide group if you need to provide. Let's be efficient here, we can do this and that. But overall change takes a while, no matter where you are.
What other advice would you give them? And you talked about learning Japanese, and just to come back to that point, why do you think that's important?
To get that connection. I think I've seen people come in that don't understand, and I think I can see that there's a gap between what the team really wants to say, similar to what you mentioned earlier about your survey. What does it mean in Japanese, and what does it come back to in English? And I think that gap's always going to come. Unfortunately, Japan doesn't have a great English literacy level. So there's always going to be that lost in translation, which was filmed not too far from here. But
we're just near the Park High.
but there was that, and so there's going to be that gap. So if you come in without any understanding, what you mentioned earlier from the survey is going to occur. That's inevitable. So to bridge that gap, as small as it can be, is to have just a little bit of that literacy, be able to communicate. Okay, I know what you're saying now, and interpret it different. You're going to lose that, lost in translation piece, be able to really understand what they mean, and then deliver different results or outcomes.
Language is always an entree point to the culture, isn't it? Because once you start learning the language, it gives you insights into the culture and the thinking and the value system and the expectations and that helps to try and understand what's going on around you.
Yeah.
If you don't have that aspect, it's very hard to work it out from just looking at it.
Yeah, yeah. And it's not an easy one. You know, you can't just pick up a language overnight. So it's not something, but I think for any organization that's looking to send people, I think that's something that they should really think about, because there is a huge part. No matter how much the leadership will talk about English locally.
English is our language of the office in Japan.
Exactly, but
So
then
for
that's
their clients, don't speak English almost.
that's when it hits the concrete. When it trickles down, the rest of the team doesn't. So there's that gap that does come.
Yeah, and I say that, being able to go and speak with clients directly,
Yeah,
with no interpreter,
yeah,
they feel very comfortable.
yeah.
Very comfortable.
Yeah, it's always surprising when I'll go. They're all like, "Oh my god, this is all," and then you can speak, and then it changes.
When you go by yourself too,
Yeah.
like you don't have
Yeah.
your entourage.
Yep.
You come with the president.
Yeah.
The president turns up
Yeah.
on his own,
Yeah.
or her own, and talks directly to the client. I think that's Japanese never do it like that. There's always some kaban mochi, something.
Yeah, and someone. Yeah.
We sort of tend to be a bit more independent. Anything else you'd give them in terms of advice on how to be successful in Japan when they're sent here?
I mean, enjoy it. Japan's a beautiful country. I don't really know what advice. I don't know if my advice would be sound anyway. But for me, it's really, I think it's understand what the team really wants. Don't get that lost in translation piece. Enjoy it. It's a beautiful place. There's plenty of potential. So seek that potential. Seek out some of those quick efficiency wins. And really just bond with the team and understand what you need to do for the business. Most of the people, even here for ARYZTA, they've been 20 years, they've been in this company. So this is their life. They love the organization, they have brilliant ideas, and how do you extract those ideas is what any leader should really be doing. Is sort of, okay, I like that, I'll see, and how can I really change that? How can I make a difference? I would say is probably some of the advice.
So, in a moment I'm going to ask you for your definition of leadership, but before that, are there any aspects that we haven't covered that you'd like to add in this discussion about leading in Japan?
It's different from wherever you are. I mean, when I was in Australia compared to here, and it's a different style of leadership. Japanese are quite conservative, and it's really trying to break down those barriers. No matter which organization I worked at, or if I see others, I do see that they're quite silo-driven. And how do you break down those silos, I think, is something that within any organization, how do you get people communicating and collaborating? Because everyone is smart, and it's just they're not talking to each other. So
I find that the silo thing is based around job description and fear of failure. So I always make the joke that if you could get the job description on the back of a post stamp size, tiny little thing there, everyone would be brilliantly happy because it's so microscopically small.
Yeah.
And therefore your capacity to make a mistake or not deliver is much reduced. So that idea that I look after my little patch and I don't worry about the other patches.
Yeah.
And as long as I'm on my little postage stamp there delivering, I'm doing a good job, as opposed to a little bit more of an integrated, holistic, collaborative, cooperative viewpoint on it. So that's something I always think to myself. Because when I talk to my own team, they really want to know what their job description is, and I'm a bit more broad, or not vague, but a bit more. I'm not sort of locked into it. This is the only thing you can do. It's an organisation here. We help each other. Any views on
that? Look, it comes back to the failure piece, and you even said it. I think a lot of people work in silos because they don't want to make a mistake, and they know that they've done the right job. It was someone else that didn't. It doesn't work that way. It has to be a holistic one-team approach. Otherwise, if one place fails, the whole organization fails. And it's really showing that, whether it be through communication, whatever, that this is key. That if not every cylinder is firing, you're going to have a slower car. That's just common sense. So we need all cylinders firing at the same time, working together. Otherwise, your car's not going to move.
Any other additional comments you think about leading in Japan? Other things that occur to you? Different or challenging or unique?
Sometimes process is a little slow, I think, which is, when you're working overseas, when I was in the UK or be it in Hong Kong, things were quite snappy and quick. In Japan, it's a lot of rubber stamping and especially our customers and checking and so on. And I think that's because some organizations don't promote the failures okay piece and really letting their team make decisions. You're at this level, so your decision process is that. I think, and we're lucky maybe because it's a smaller organization that I can give them sort of a delegation of authority to say, you can do that, go there, make it, let's see what happens,
Yeah, I get frustrated at times about speed, because we have a thing called a daily Dale where we go through vision, mission, values, a whole raft of things. And one of the things I added in there was like a mantra that in our business at our size, we must have a strong sense of urgency. We have to be the speedboat. We cannot be the oil tanker because they're all oil tankers. I found, that's really small and you've got to be nimble, agile.
Yeah.
Your speed is an advantage over a bigger opponent. But to get the team to think like that, we didn't have that concept.
Yeah.
Slow and steady tortoise is going to win the race here.
Yeah, it's funny what you've said. I've talked about in other town halls. Didn't use the oil tanker, but sense of urgency and.
Well, no one got that metaphor.
Yeah.
This is what concept of an oil tanker is beyond their imagination. That it takes ages for an oil tanker to, like I got.
Yeah.
They didn't get it, so I had to explain what that meant. An oil tanker takes ages to turn around, whereas a speedboat turns around on the spot because it's fast, agile, quick, which is what we've got to be.
Yeah.
So that was a bit of a misplaced metaphor, I found. But after I explained it, they sort of got it. But the first time I said it, it was looking at me.
So one thing I also try and do is make sure that I can tell my 10-year-old son and he understands. So that level is how I try. Not to say anyone's not smarter. What I am trying to say is make it as simple as possible. It helps. Yeah. So I can use a difficult analogy and then it makes sense to me, but maybe not to everyone. Yeah. And it comes back to, town hall meeting. How do we make it that finance is easy? How do you make things simple as possible that people can sink in and understand and then move forward? That also helps with the speed rather than having to continue and explain. And so that's another thing that I'd probably do. Yeah.
Definition of leadership. How would you define leadership?
How would I define leadership? I mean, to me, leadership is someone who is ultimately responsible for the business, but for me, leadership is to be a part of the team. So though I'm probably the head of an organization, or probably the head of the organization, to me, it's leading by example, leading not from the back of the chair, but at the front of the army. It's really being a part of the team.
In the front.
Yeah, I'll probably try and dodge a few, but I will be definitely at the front, and it's leading that way, and people see that, and they know that I'm there. I'm not the boss who's saying you did something wrong. It's okay. What do we learn from this? What do we need to do? It's not you're wrong and don't do that. It's okay. Let's learn from that. That's a great. I like that idea, and it's just really being able to absorb. Even though I'm ultimately responsible, I'm learning as well from what team members will have to say, and it's just really driving the business like that. I think that's what a true leader is, someone who learns, who's willing to listen and willing to take the challenge or do something and drive the organization in the right way.
Nice definition and a good place to end. So, Bostjan, thank you very much.
No, thank you, Greg.
Please join us again for our next episode of Japan's top business interviews.